The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Friday, May 17th. Hope everybody's had a great week and looking forward to a fantastic weekend. All right, we are going to jump right into the news. And in the third segment of the show, after I answer questions, we will be discussing ambition. The need. I think in order to live a good life, to be ambitious, and then we'll talk about in what realm and how to discover your ambition, if you will, or how to ignite your ambition, and all of that. In the meantime, feel free to ask questions. Questions are open. I do have one question from yesterday that I didn't get to because it was asked right after I shut down the show. But please feel free to ask any questions about any topics as we move forward. All right, let's start with the Gaza, with Israel. Israel today announced that they had discovered the bodies of 3 of the hostages, and they had brought them back to Israel, let their families know. These are bodies of people they believe were killed on October 7th, whose bodies were taken back to Gaza, I guess for public display to show the prowess of Hamas. So, just disgusting. Anyway, so these are not people hostages they think were killed, were taken to Gaza alive and then killed there, but who were probably killed in Israel and then whose bodies were taken there. One of the bodies discovered today or brought back to Israel today was the body of the German woman who is just, I think we saw videos of her, if you saw some of the videos, was raped, was then groped, was mutilated and taken back into Gaza, a good-looking woman with it seems like a joyous sense of life, and just abused, and then taken back, and I don't know if you remember these scenes, but she's in the back of a Jeep, and people are just celebrating, and it's and dancing and enjoying the so-called success. This is who Hamas is, but it's more than that, right? This is who the Palestinians in Gaza are. I mean, we shouldn't shy away from that fact. These were not Hamas militants dancing in the streets. These were the residents of Gaza. And indeed, I keep seeing video of every time they manage to get off a few rockets to attack Israel these days from Gaza, the Gazan population is still celebrating that fact. So they have a death wish, and they're not coward yet. They haven't been brought to their knees yet. There's still time to do that, but Israel better get on with it, and better, it needs to do a lot more than just enter Rafah. It needs to make it clear to these people that they have lost, and they will always lose, and they don't have any chance of ever succeeding, and that they can celebrate now, but this is never going to happen again. I don't know that Israel has it in them to actually make that message clear to the Palestinian people. But remember, this is not a war with Hamas. This is a war with the Palestinian people in Gaza. And that there's no question about that. And you don't go to war just with the government. You go to war with the state, and that state includes the people there. Anyway, that is that is the hostages. I should add that Israel has intelligence that Hamas has killed a number of the hostages and buried them in some of the graveyards in Rafah. And indeed, Israeli troops right now, I can't imagine them having to do this, but Israeli troops right now in an area of eastern Rafah in southern Gaza are literally excavating graveyards. They have taken over a graveyard and they're excavating the graveyard because they have intelligence that Hamas has buried bodies of multiple hostages in the graveyard in order to conceal them. The three bodies of the hostages who were killed on October 7th were found in a tunnel in northern Gaza. But these are what seem like fresh kills, that is people killed in the south of Gaza as hostages. And it'll be interesting if they find bodies, and it'll be interesting to see how Israel responds if they find bodies, and it'll be interesting to see how the international community responds if they find bodies. Will this change anybody's mind that Hamas is killing hostages? And indeed, it's not clear of the 100 and something hostages Hamas has, it's not clear how many are alive. Hamas would only commit to releasing 33, and partially they said they don't know where the others are, suggesting probably they've either lost track of them, but that's probably not what it is. But suggesting that they have maybe lost them. Anyway, that is the situation with the hostages. Battles continue to rage in the south of Gaza and in the area around Rafah, around where the last four of the last five units of Hamas's militants are still based. Israel is slowly entering Rafah in spite of Biden's red line. They still haven't entered the heart of Rafah. I expect that to happen, I think, in the days to come. I expect it to happen faster if they find bodies in these cemeteries, in the graveyards. Sadly, I think it should happen fast no matter what. But unfortunately, they're not listening to me. But that is going on. But those of you concerned about the Palestinians in Gaza, not to worry. That you remember that floating, was it pier that the U.S. built, that 1,000 Americans were involved in building, American troops were involved in building off the coast of Gaza, with the causeway taking it into central Gaza. That is done. The pier is complete. The causeway is complete. Trucks are now, taking aid that is brought in by boat and loading it up to trucks and driving it into Gaza. And the United States' great humanitarian mission has, succeeded. And the people of Gaza will be fed, and they'll have their basic needs taken care of. God forbid that they suffer the consequences of their own choices. God forbid that they suffer the consequences of the government they support. No, we want to bail them out as much as we can. And I love it that various, libertarian types and conservative types criticize the U.S. government support for Israel, but foreign aid, our tax money, but don't have any problem with our tax money going to fund piers and aid and all this stuff to a Palestinian people who hate our guts and would like to see us all slaughtered and dead. Anyway, the Navy will continue to supply food. Have you noticed, by the way, the lack of something, and that is the lack of any photos coming out of Gaza, the lack of any video coming out of Gaza of famine, of people literally starving, of kids where you can see their ribs and and real starvation. I mean, isn't that bizarre? I mean, because we've been hearing over and over and over again for the last 7 months, not enough aid is going in, there's famine, we're on the verge of famine. Any day now there'll be famine. There's going to be famine immediately. Just, and yet it is, the famine is not materialized. It has not happened. And that is because plenty of aid is going on, and too much in my view, so much aid is going in that a lot of it is siphoned off and is being basically hoarded by Hamas to basically fuel their own agenda. But don't you think that if there was real famine, if there was real starvation, and this was visible, that this is something that we would see videos and photos of? No question about that. All right. Okay, that is it for Israel. Happy to answer any questions you might have on what's going on in Israel, what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in that war. Turning to Ukraine. Ukraine is obviously under a huge amount of stress right now. Russian forces attacking Ukraine from multiple fronts, from multiple directions. The advance of the Russian forces in the northeast of Ukraine has stalled or slowed down, put it that way. And now Russia's saying, "Oh, we never really intended to go to Kharkiv. We just wanted a buffer zone." A buffer zone to what? So it seems like that has slowed down. But Ukraine is taking losses, on small-time losses, nothing major, on multiple fronts. It's under a huge amount of pressure. And the big problem that they have is that they just don't have enough soldiers. There's just not enough soldiers in the Ukrainian military. And then, of course, the soldiers need to be trained. And a lot of the training is happening outside of Ukraine by NATO. And then they have to come back into Ukraine and go to the front. So one of the considerations NATO is having is bringing their trainers into Ukraine and training Ukrainians in Ukrainian troops inside Ukraine. But that would mean NATO troops in Ukraine. And of course, NATO is constantly panicked over how will the Russians interpret this. And we don't want to piss off the Russians. We'll give the Ukrainians a lot of ammo and weapons and everything else, but not too much and not the right ones. And because we don't want to upset the Russians. I mean, the cowardice is just unbelievable, only to be matched by Republicans who are so cowed by Putin that they don't want to help the Ukrainians at all. Anyway, Zelensky has a problem. How do you get more troops? We'll see if NATO brings training into Ukraine itself. So they have expanded kind of the conscription, but they have a very weird draft in Ukraine. Right? You have to be like 27 years old to be drafted. So they're not drafting 18 to 27-year-olds, which is bizarre. I mean, every other army I know in the world emphasizes the 18 to 30-year-olds. Those are your best soldiers. They're young and they're in good shape, and maybe they're not smart enough to know what hell they're going into. Israel's military is primarily 18 to 21-year-olds. That is the bulk of, because that's who they draft, and then they have reserves. But Ukraine is resisting the young adults, and I don't understand why. I have to read it up. I have to read up about it and figure out what's going on. Anyway, Zelensky's decided to mobilize convicts. So they will allow certain Ukrainian prisoners to be conscripted for military service in exchange for reduced prison sentences. They're hoping to recruit about 15,000 additional soldiers utilizing this policy. This is, of course, a policy that Russia had adopted a long time ago. And that Russians that Russia conscripted a bunch of, particularly the Wagner Group. The Wagner Group enlisted a lot of convicts, many of them killed in the battles for Bakhmut about a year and a half ago. And anyway, Ukraine is now doing the same thing. It sounds like act of desperation to me, but I mean, I think it's sad. It partially is for political reasons, because they don't want to, for whatever reason, Zelensky is not willing to expand the age from which they conscript. Now, I'm not for conscription, not in Ukraine, not in Israel, not anywhere. But if you're going to conscript, then do it in a way that makes sense. And particularly in a war, you can understand conscription in a war of literal survival more than you can understand conscription anywhere else. I'm still not justifying it, but just more understandable. Last night, Ukraine conducted one of its largest drone attacks, really in the history of war. They sent it seems, well over 80 drones, one-way attack drones, towards mainland Russia, so not towards the occupied territories, but inside Russia. Novorossiysk, Russia, which is about 350 kilometers from the closest frontier, and the refinery in Dvorak, Russia, which is about 450 kilometers from the front line. The attack lasted for hours. Dozens of drones followed sometimes the same trajectory without being, what's interesting is no interception from Russian air defenses, and they struck within Russia. It's, the Novorossiysk is a big harbor in which a lot of the Russian fleet has escaped to after they were originally based at the harbor in Crimea, and that harbor has come under repeated attacks by the Ukrainians. So they've retreated to this harbor further away from the front line in Russia. It'll be interesting to see what was attacked exactly. It looks like the fleet itself was not attacked, but infrastructure all around was attacked, and that this refinery is being attacked. Generally, Ukraine has been targeting refineries all over Russia quite successfully with its attacks, recognizing that Russia, basically the money that Russia uses to fund its war is money that comes from it being able to sell its oil products around the world. Now, there is supposedly a boycott of those oil products, but the boycott is not actually enforced. We'll get to that in a minute. It's not actually enforced, and it is selling oil not only to China and India, but it is selling oil all over the world, and it is, the violations of sanctions are massive, and that's how it's funding the war. Without natural resources, Russia would collapse. I mean, it has no revenue other than the sale of natural resources. What did I want to say about natural resources? Yeah, I mean, the best way to force the Russian economy to collapse is to open the spigots in the United States and flood the market with oil. Of course, the Biden administration would never do that, but imagine if we went on a drill, baby, drill, and maybe that would be the thing that crushes the Russians ultimately, is if Trump gets elected and just opens up the oil spigots and the price of oil collapses, and Russia won't be able to sell its oil anymore, because it sells at a discount because people are violating the boycott. It's interesting. If you look at a Russian missile, and they've got a lot of them, and they're bombing they're bombing daily Ukrainian cities and civilians and infrastructure and everything else, you will find that that every single one of those missiles could not be in the air without Western companies providing the Russians with components. Russia does not make the components that make those missiles fly. Those missiles are flying because Western countries are making it possible for them to get the components necessary for them to fly. And the reality is that in spite of placing boycotts and everything else, the West has not been able to muster up the willpower, the resources, the commitment to actually stop companies from trading with Russia. I mentioned this maybe a year ago or more, that suddenly Western countries are trading enormous amounts with Kazakhstan and Kazakhstan and Tajikistan and Armenia and all these countries, which are buying stuff for Russia and then trading with Russia. They don't have any problem selling stuff to the Russians. And of course, instead of adapting the boycott to cover all these countries that are helping Russia circumvent the boycott, the West doesn't care. The West doesn't give a damn. Many companies are just returning to business as usual with the Russians, not even pretending, not even going around, but just trading directly with Russia itself. From what I've read, Microsoft is one of those companies. Just no problems with the boycotts, nothing. They're just trading directly with the Russians and not worrying about the consequences. This is why whatever small advancements Russia is having on the battlefront, they have it all. Russia would have collapsed and disappeared, and basically would have had to grovel if not for the fact that the West is just not committed to actually having Ukraine defeat Russia. The West continues to sell them components, continues to sell them technology, and continues to buy or allow people to buy oil from Russia and natural gas from Russia with no consequences. Indeed, the United States, until a bill was passed 2 weeks ago, was still buying uranium from Russia to fuel our nuclear power plants. And Congress just passed a bill that banned importation of uranium from Russia. I guess they found an alternative source. So it is the West that constantly claims to be pro-Ukraine and wanting Ukraine to win and wanting to put pressure on Russia to lose and wanting all this. It is indeed the West that is keeping Russia alive and thriving and successful in spite of all that. Anyway, Russia can barely keep up, given all that, and it's going to be interesting. The evolution of this is going to be interesting. Let's see. All right. Let's jump into not so controversial waters. Immigration obviously is one of the big issues of this campaign, this election season, and maybe the biggest. It certainly seems to be the thing that Americans are most concerned about. Immigration is what if Trump wins, it's going to be the issue that pulls him over the top. It is an issue that obviously, from the perspective of most Americans, Biden is unbelievably weak on, and immigration has soared under Biden, particularly asylum seekers have soared under Biden. And indeed, Trump wants to, all signs are that Trump clearly wants to reward his supporters with a massive investment, if you will, in his immigration agenda when he becomes president. This presidency of Trump is going to be very different than the previous one. And it's going to be different primarily because this time he's actually got people whether explicitly through his orders or implicitly because they just want to, basically preparing for a Trump presidency. We have the Heritage Foundation basically dedicated itself, explicitly so, they're saying this, to finding, training, working with people who could serve in a Trump administration in the future, and in developing strategies and developing policies for the Trump administration in the future to engage. The Heritage Foundation has basically kicked out all its libertarian-leaning, free market-leaning people, and they are bringing in masse the kind of MAGA-type people to plan and figure out, also interview people in order to figure out who will be inside the administration. So Trump has the ability this time around to actually hit the road running, whereas last time, I think he was surprised more than anybody else that he actually won. And it took a long time to get appointment. And if you remember, he fired Chris Christie right in the middle, and all the transition plans were thrown out with Chris Christie. This time, if Trump behaves, but who knows what Trump will do. This time, there's a real possibility that Trump comes in with an entire portfolio of knowing exactly what to do, who to appoint, where to appoint them, how to do it, and actually get stuff done based on his agenda from day one. Now, it also means that the people around him are not going to be the adults in the room. They're not going to be people like Kelly and I forget the defense secretary and others who kind of reined in Trump's impulses. It's going to be quite the opposite. It's going to be a bunch of people that will only reinforce the worst elements within Trump. That is what they are going to do. Anyway, plans are being drawn out, according to the Wall Street Journal. Detailed plans are being drawn out to deal with immigration on day one. As Trump has promised, one of the first things they intend doing is basically go out there and round up all the so-called illegal immigrants and start massive deportation. Now, deportation is not easy because we're still a country of laws, although who knows under Trump. And the reality is that the law is such that most of the people that they'd be rounding up are still waiting to seek asylum. And while they're waiting for seek asylum, American law does not allow you to deport them. So they're drawing up plans to have speedy asylum courts that are basically go through the motions, but basically rule against their asylum. And then the question is, where do you deport them to? And here again, there are legal issues. That is, you can only deport people to a country that's willing to accept them. And many of these countries are running away from countries that do not want them. Now, I talked the other day about China and how China is quite happy to get its deported citizens, its asylum-seeking citizens back. They'll send them immediately to gulags. And we will happily participate in that. Remember, this is a country, America, that sent people basically back to Germany to die in the concentration camps because we didn't want immigrants. We don't like those immigrants. And that's exactly what happened in the 1930s. You can read about it. We will send them back to China to be sent to the gulags. The problem is that what about other countries like Venezuela and many others that don't want them back? So one of the things is the Trump team is putting together a list of countries that might be willing to accept asylum seekers, even if they're not from the country itself, maybe from other countries, they'd be willing to accept. They are looking at maybe even sending some of these asylum seekers to Africa. The UK has a deal with Rwanda where the Rwandans have been willing to accept people who have sought asylum in England and been turned down, and they're going to put them on planes and send them to Rwanda. So the United States is going to look to place people, I guess, coming from Venezuela and Latin American countries and send them to Africa. That makes sense. But the point here is that there really is a real structure to Trump's plans and the people around Trump and the whole MAGA since 2016. There are now MAGA think tanks. There are now identified MAGA people. There are MAGA experts. There are people that know what they're doing in a bad way, right? They know what they're doing, and many of them are more radical or more crazy or more nutty than Donald Trump is. And they're going to be put in charge of things. So, if the first administration, a lot of the people running the regulatory agencies were deregulators and people who really are free market types, because those were people that kind of were available on a short-term notice. Now you've got a whole cadre of these MAGA types who are not free market at all, and indeed are anti-free markets. And they are going to take these positions. And so whatever good was done in the first Trump administration, and some good did happen, particularly at the level of regulations, is not going to be done this time. I'd even say whatever good was done, in foreign policy is not going to happen this time, because the better people in foreign policy are not going to be invited to the Trump administration. They're going to take the worst people in foreign policy. John Bolton's not going to be invited back. Again, Kelly, God, what is the name of the general? God, somebody help me with the name of the general who was in the first Trump administration. Anyway, doesn't really matter that much, but it bugs me that I can't remember the name. Mathis, thank you, Daniel. Mathis, General Mathis. Those people are not going to be serving in the Trump administration. You're going to have MAGA through and through, and the worst kind of MAGA. So, can you imagine America, where troops or units of, I don't know, National Guard, or I don't know who they enlist to do this, police, are going house to house and rounding people up in order to put them in camps while they're being quickly tried and then put on planes and shipped out to some of the most evil authoritarian regimes out there. Flynn. Yeah, I mean, Flynn didn't last more than a week, right? But Flynn turned out to be. I met Flynn, and he was quite good when I met him and he spoke. He was quite good on Iran. He was quite good on some foreign policy issues, and he served in Iraq, and he was a very talented intelligence officer. The guy, once he left the Trump administration, the guy has become a complete and utter kook. I mean, a complete and utter nutcase. Super religious, super conspiracy theory, just a complete nut. Traveling around the country, speaking at churches about the latest conspiracy theories. God, I mean, imagine Flynn being brought into the Trump administration. I actually don't think Trump is nutty enough to bring Flynn into that administration. But I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Let's see. He was, maybe the intelligence agency went after him for no reason. It's still no excuse to become a complete nut. I mean, fine, I know a lot of people who've suffered fates much, much, much worse than Flynn's, and who came out of it, human beings, came out of it more committed to liberty, more committed to freedom, and more rational. Flynn has, whatever you think of that excuse, whatever you think of what they did to him, it came out of it a complete kook. Complete kook. I'm sorry, just no excuse. I mean, he was a little bit of that, borderline, when I met him, but now he's completely lost the plot. And that is, I guess, sad, but also pathetic. Sorry they went after him, but that's pretty pathetic. Just to give you a sense, if we're talking about immigration, if the United States, I saw this in a tweet, and I checked it out, and the number's right. If the United States had a guest workers visa program, like Singapore, on the scale of Singapore's, that is, guest workers as a percent of the population, in the United States today, there would be about 100 million low-skilled guest workers here, which is, 50 times what we have now. So we have 2 million, and if we just did it on the scale of Singapore, we'd have 100 million, and that's guest workers. It's just coming in, they work, and they go back. We had that pre-1965. We had a very robust guest worker program back then. There are plenty of jobs in the United States. There's no shortage of jobs that they could fill doing that. And most of these people would prefer living in Mexico, working in the U.S., getting wages in the U.S., going back with a strong dollar to Mexico. There's so many good solutions to the immigration problem. There's so many great things you can do with immigration, really, really good things you can do vis-a-vis immigration. And it's off the table. You can't talk about it. You can't propose a bill about it. You can't suggest anything. It's just not something. It's like this unspeakable thing that nobody can do, and so on. Yeah. What is really going to happen, this time, last time, Trump said he would drain the swamp, and I said he just swapped the swamp animals. And to some extent I was right. He did swap the swamp animals, but he kept most of the existing swamp. That is, he didn't do almost anything to get rid of the existing swamp animals. He just brought additional ones of his own liking. This time, he's gonna flood the swamp. You can't flood a swamp with animals. He's gonna populate the swamp with massive quantities of his swamp animals. He might this time get rid of more of the other swamp animals, but it's going to be, he's only going to increase the size of government. He's only going to increase intervention, and he's going to bring status of the right into significant positions within the government, thus keeping the swamp. We don't want to get rid of the swamp, God forbid. Just replacing the animals in it and putting his people in it. All right. Interesting. Another just story today from the Wall Street Journal. I think this was really interesting. Basically, pretty much if you're invested in anything in the past 6 months, you've done pretty well, except treasuries. But pretty much every other asset class, just in terms of investing, has done well. I mean, if you're in things like, copper, for example, that's up 32% this last 6 months. Tech stocks up 20%. Gold is up 20%. Gold is similar to tech stock, which is interesting. Russell 2000 up 18.2%. S&P 500 up 17.5%. Utility stocks, boring old utility stocks, 16.4%. The Dow Industrial Average, 14.1%. Oil, 8.7%. Crude, that is. High-yield corporate bonds up 3.6%. Intermediate-grade corporate bonds up 3.2%. The only asset class that, is treasuries, 1%, which is pretty bleak. But pretty much everything is up, clearly suggesting that at least the markets, traders in the markets, do not expect a recession. Traders in the markets believe the economy is doing quite well. The demand for the products of these companies and demand for raw materials is going to continue to go up because the economy is just chugging along in spite of everything and doing okay. It'll be interesting as we get close to the election, what happens and how much the market tries to price in a Trump victory versus a Biden victory. In 2016, the Trump victory was a surprise. The market did not expect it, and stocks responded very positively. They expected big rounds of deregulation, and to some extent they got that. Again, at the regulatory agency level, not at the legislative level. But it's going to be interesting to see how markets react as we get close to the election and uncertainty grows, and we have debates. Oh, I don't know if we haven't talked about this, but there has been we now have debates between Biden and Trump. Those are going to be fun to watch. God, I dread those. Biden, I guess, suggested two debates, one in June and one in maybe September, and that they not use the regular debating venue, that it's a new venue. Biden wants no live audience. Trump wants a big live audience. Which it'll be interesting to see where they settle on that. But it does look like we'll have presidential debates leading up to the election in November between Trump and Biden. And I'm sure all of you are looking forward to these debates. I mean, it's thrilling and exciting to watch it. Vivek will not be the vice presidential candidate. It's pretty stunning to me that some of you still think that Vivek's going to be VP. I mean, it's so obvious that he's not going to be. But anyway, that'll be interesting. I think the odds on favorite right now is Tim Scott, but we'll see. We'll see who it is, but I'm willing to put money on, and have been for months, that it will not be Vivek. And I know there must be some news outlet out there that you all listen to together that is feeding you this Vivek nonsense. It can't be that random people on my chat think it's Vivek. There has to be somebody feeding that information to all of you. Anyway, all right, some news out of Europe. Why is that not clickable? Okay. I don't know if you know what the acronym PIGS stands for. I'll tell you, right? Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain are, 4 countries in the south of Europe that have often been the problem childs of the European Union. They have generally underperformed during the financial crisis. During the financial crisis in the early 2010s, the Greek financial crisis, these countries were in deep trouble. Portugal almost went under. Italy had real challenges and real problems. And so to Spain, all of these, to one extent or another, were bailed out by the European Central Bank. Certainly Greece was explicitly, the others more implicitly, by the European Central Bank buying their debt. I think that all of them, you could say, all of them, were saved by the euro. I know people like to slam the euro, the common currency within Europe, but for Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain, the euro has been a massive blessing. If they had had their own central banks, they would have inflated like crazy, and their economies would be basket cases. The reality is that all 4 countries are doing quite well. In the post-COVID world, all 4 countries are beating, in terms of growth, the mainstays of the European economies, like Germany and France. Every single one of these economies is growing faster. Their stock markets are doing well. They are seeing rising quality of life, standard of living. A lot of that, I think a lot of that has to do with reforms. Nowhere near as dramatic as I would have liked to see, nowhere near as good as I would like to see it, but all of them went through real reforms. They had to because of the euro. They had no choice. But, for example, in Greece, laying off a lot of government employees, cutting benefits, labor reform in Spain and Portugal. Portugal did a lot of privatization, even though they had a socialist government or a left-leaning government. They did a lot of privatizing, a lot of deregulation, a lot of deregulating labor markets. All of them engaged in cutting spending. Italy, you could say, has this right-wing government. Maybe that's why they're doing so well. But Portugal and Portugal and others do not have right-wing governments. I mean, Greece is a right-leaning, but not particularly pro-markets. But the reality is that they're all forced, really, by the euro and by the economic crisis, to take measures that have helped them a lot. Rafael, by the way, who is in Portugal, is taking 100% credit for the good economy that Portugal is experiencing right now. As he should, as he absolutely should. Right? So good for these countries. Now, partially, this is a consequence also of a post-COVID boom in tourism. These are all countries that have large tourist industries. Basically, these are countries that have a lot of services, but think Italy tourism, Spain, Portugal, definitely tourism, Greece, tourism is huge. They've done very well with tourism. Their economies are going well. I mean, I've been now to Portugal a few times since COVID, and Portugal seems to be doing really well. Spain is doing better than it had been. And I hear, I haven't witnessed it myself, although I was in Greece, when was it, a year ago? Maybe more. And it seemed to be buzzing. So let's see, I've been to all those countries, right? I've been to Greece, Italy, Spain, and Portugal, all of them. Over the last 3 years, I've been to every single one of them more than once, other than Greece, only once. And they all seem to be doing fine. And this says a few things. It shows how, in some sense, maybe sadly for us, free market types, that you don't have to do much. You don't have to think of much with a mixed economy to get it moving, to get it growing. Growth is possible, even in a mixed economy. So I think that is part of it. I think that it should be reassuring to many of you that these are countries that are in deep trouble, that have really screwed up mixed economies. There's no question that it is going to be much harder for the United States to fall off a cliff than these other countries. There's so much wealth, there's so much expertise, there's so much knowledge. I know you guys don't like experts, but there's so much expertise, there's so much capital, there's so much ability, and there's still, in spite of everything, so much flexibility in this economy that falling off a cliff if Portugal isn't falling off a cliff, unlikely the United States will. Anyway, the pigs are catching up. They're not quite. They're still far away in terms of just wealth, far away from the bigger, more substantial European economies, but they are certainly catching up. Yes. All right, just a quick story about crazy environmentalists in Germany. I don't know if you saw pictures of this, but just a horde of German climate protesters. I guess that's what they're called. I don't know what to call them. Nihilists. I think a bunch of black-clad German nihilists attacked. They stormed a Tesla electric car company last week. They want to break into the company and destroy it. They want to see it burn. They want to see it crushed. This all as part of an environmental protest. They don't want fossil fuels, but they don't want electric cars either. This is where we are. This is where we are in Germany. Environmentalists want, you see this in California and in places like Nevada and Arizona, they want solar panels, but they don't want them, they don't want to destroy the habitat of the desert. You keep over and over and over seeing that what the environmentalists really care about is not transitioning to cleaner fuels or stopping climate change. What they really want is to see the world burn. What they really want is destruction. What they really want is a return to the Dark Ages. They and the crazy conservatives, or some of the crazy conservatives at the Daily Wire, share a common desire to go back to 1220 and live that way. They want to destroy civilization. Both. The crazy conservative. What was the name of the conservative? See, I can't retain names. I think Walsh, but it's not Walsh. It's the other one who wants to go back to 1220. They want to destroy civilization. They want to destroy modern civilization. And both, and this is what scares me. What scares me is Michael Knowles. What scares me about Michael Knowles and the fact that both Michael Knowles and many of the kind of conservatives he represents and the crazy leftists, what scares me about that is that they share a common goal. And what all you need now is a dictator, a authoritarian type to come forward and say, in the name of God, we must preserve the environment, which the Catholic tradcons are indeed saying, and embracing both Michael Knowles and the crazy left. Both are nihilistic, essentially. Both want the destruction of civilization. Well, let me facilitate it. Let me bring it all under this big umbrella, and we'll wrap it all up with an American flag, and we will lead the world in this. That is what is scary. And Michael Knowles might not be rushing factories, but he's doing, I mean, we're objectivists. We believe that ideas shape history. We're not Marxists who believe that it is rushing factories that changes history. Michael Knowles is a lot more dangerous. I mean, orders of magnitude more dangerous than the crazy idiots rushing factories. I mean, did they burn Tesla down? No, they didn't. Did it have any impact on Tesla? No, they didn't. Did most Germans look at them and say, crazy fools? Yes, they did. It is Michael Knowles teaching our new generation of conservatives not to love liberty, not to love freedom, not to love capitalism, but to love 1220. Much more dangerous. Teachers, intellectuals, always much more dangerous than activists in the field. But for that, one of the things you have to do is understand Ayn Rand's theory of history, understand what actually moves the world, what actually changes the world. And I should do a show on that, on Rand's theory of history. I will do that. All right, that's coming. All right, that is the news from May 17th, Friday, May 17th. Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here. All right, let us shift to answering questions, and after that, we'll talk a little bit about ambition and personal ambition, and then we will call it a day. We'll see how far this takes us. Michael, $200. Wow, thank you, Michael. Michael says, yesterday you answered a question on infinity saying, why do you care? How does it affect your life? If things don't make sense, it will drive me bananas. And I'm sure many others. One of the major components of what attracts people to objectivism is that it makes the world make sense. Oh, Michael. But you have, when it comes to physics, modern physics is not going to make sense to you. Now, you could go study physics, but it's not going to make sense to you unless you're a physicist. And my question to you is, why do you care? Why do you need to know every last detail in physics? Now, it's true, our enemies use physics to try to argue that our philosophy is wrong. But it's not going to be us, the non-physicists, who are going to answer them. You just have to stick by whatever physics says. It can't contradict the law of identity. And you can explain to them how, by trying to contradict the law of identity, they are actually putting themselves into a contradiction. I did answer the question, by the way, and I said that infinity doesn't exist. Now, what is the shape of the universe if infinity doesn't exist? I don't know. Nobody knows. And I'm not sure we have the tools right now to know. And I'm pretty sure, I'm actually absolutely sure, that a layman who's not an expert in physics, it might be generations before laymen, the physicists get to the point where they can, first of all, they discover these things and then give us the tools to understand them. It's just a realm of expertise that I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know. One of the most important things in life to be able to do is to say, I don't know. And to say, something doesn't make sense, therefore I have to have an answer to it. No, you don't. When I studied quantum mechanics, and if you study quantum mechanics, you will discover that it doesn't make sense given the terminology being used. Given the way it's framed, quantum mechanics doesn't make sense. But it works. It's real. Whatever's happening is real. So you can say, I don't understand it. Maybe you can even say, nobody understands it. We still don't have a good explanation for the phenomena of quantum mechanics. But to say, I'm not a physicist, and I have to have an explanation for quantum mechanics is going to drive you crazy. Why did the stock market go, what did it do yesterday? It went either up or down, would be my guess. So why did it go, let's see. Well, I don't know what it's going up. I guess the NASDAQ is down and the Dow is up. The NASDAQ is down and the Dow is up right now. Why are they diverging? Why aren't they going in the same direction? What is this about? What's causing them to move at all? Why are people, what happened? Why? I told you that the S&P 500 is up 20% this year, or tech stocks up 22% this year. Why? And 99% of us should say, I don't know. Don't know. And you could even say, given the philosophy of the culture and given what's going on in the world, it doesn't make sense to me. Okay. That's okay. And you can say, it doesn't make sense to me. If I really, really, really am interested, I'll go study that. I'll go try to figure it out. But I don't have the time right now, so I'm going to move on. I mean, if you stopped and had to really delve into everything that didn't make sense to you, there would be no end. So I'm sorry, but you really need to think about why young objectivists do this. I remember I did it. Why the young objectivists and I was studying physics. I mean, I wasn't studying physics, but I took classes in college on physics because it was required for my degree. Why the young objectivists spend so much time thinking and worrying about physics, abstract concepts in physics, when it doesn't matter? It doesn't make sense to you. Okay. It doesn't make sense to physicists either. So what I'm trying to do is encouraging you to acknowledge what you don't know, and to accept it. And where that lack of knowledge is interfering with your ability to live a great life, dig deep, figure it out. But where it's really not, if you're really objective about it, if you really think it through, it's not interfering with your ability to live a great life, then let it go. Let it go. I mean, I love history, but there's a lot I don't know. I know there's much, much more that I don't know than I do know. That's true almost of every field of study I've ever studied. There's a lot. I'm a generalist. That's part of the problem. But there's a lot more I don't know than I do know. And there's a lot of things in the world that don't make any sense. What objectivism provides you is principles that make philosophic sense. But the question of infinity is not, it's a physics question in terms of when it comes to the shape of the universe. Philosophy tells you things are finite. Everything is finite. That's philosophy tells you. But science and the scientific reason and the shape of the universe and things like that, that's science. That's specialization. That requires specialized knowledge. And you're not going to have that. You can't have specialized knowledge in every field which you don't understand. I don't understand a lot of things. What doesn't make sense to you? So focus on philosophy. And even there, focus on the basics of philosophy, the philosophy that really contributes to your life, contributes to your decision-making, contributes to your understanding of the world in which you are acting, not in the subatomic particle world where you're not acting, unless you're a subatomic world engineer or dealing with it like, I don't know, like building hardware in computers. And then make sure that the philosophy that you need to know makes sense to you. I mean, Ayn Rand talked about philosophy for Reardon as compared to philosophy for Ragnar. Ragnar, if you remember, the pirate in Atlas Shrugged, was a philosophy major. He was a philosopher pirate, which is pretty cool, I think. I can't think of many things more cool than a philosopher pirate. And Reardon was a businessman. Reardon needs to know philosophy, but not to the level that a philosopher needs to know it. So make sure that the things you need to know, you understand and they make sense to you. If something you're really, really curious about and it's important to you, and knowledge in that field is accessible, then go for it. You always want to know more. Knowledge is a good thing, generally. But accept that the things you will never know, accept that the things that you don't know, accept that the things that are overly specialized for you, and live with that. All right. Thank you, Michael. That $200. I appreciate the question. Bree. I made a bit of money on my silver options. It looks like the Green New Deal is creating a shortage in silver and copper. If this continues, we may have another round of inflation because copper is in everything. But the reality is that doesn't create inflation. I explained this the other day on the show. Copper prices could go to 500 and it wouldn't affect inflation. It could affect economic growth and recession and stuff like that, but it wouldn't affect price inflation. Because to the extent that everything that has copper in it, its price goes up, then those things would get more expensive. But if the monetary base does not change, in a sense the amount of money in the economy stays the same, then other prices must go down. And in some cases go down to zero in the sense of some products will be eliminated. The number of goods will shrink. There'll be a recession to calibrate it all. Because, so some of the stuff that is made from copper would be so expensive, it'll have to be shut down because nobody will be able to afford it. So overall inflation doesn't go up because a particular good prices go up. You have to differentiate between relative prices are good vis-a-vis each other, and absolute prices, which is the goods as a basket, all rising or going down. And that's generally what we mean by inflation or price inflation. So just copper going up doesn't cause inflation. Oil going up doesn't cause inflation, even though people think it does. People are wrong. Thank you, Bree. Andrew, how close is the U.S. to being ready for a dictatorship? Rand thought American independence was so strong that it was unlikely, but that was mostly made of sense of life and thus vulnerable to erosion. Are we still strong enough? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think we're particularly strong. I also think that the thing that isn't there yet to bring us to a dictatorship is the integrating factor, the unifier, the something to unify. We're very divided. We're very in combat with one another in terms of the politics of it. There's no one unifying ideology that we could get under. Now, it's true that was also true under the Nazis and everybody else. So the question is, could there be something that in a quick swoop of history, it just happens? Maybe. I just don't see it. I don't see it. I still think we need a charismatic leader. We need some vision of an ideology that combines, that can unite left and right. The Nazis did. A lot of communists became Nazis. National socialism, and you need something like that. You need some unifying factor. Again, Christian environmentalism could be it. I don't know. But before that would happen, you'd have to see at least the beginnings of a shift in attitude towards religion, which are now religions in decline in America. So I don't think we're quite ready for dictatorship, but certainly the sense of life of Americans has eroded significantly. Certainly we're closer to dictatorship now than we were in the 1980s when Leonard Peikoff wrote Ominous Parallels. But the exact timeline, what a culture looks like when it's ready, I don't know. We've got the decadence, the kind of D2 decadence, destructiveness, nihilism that Leonard Peikoff identifies as necessary in his as a feature in his Demo hypothesis. The question is, do we have the M2? Do we have the misintegration lined up to get all these disintegrated people to come and unite over one set of agendas? I just don't know. Not enough of a. I don't have enough knowledge on how these mass movements actually get shaped. All right, Rafael had a question from yesterday. Oh, not a question I like. Okay, Rafael, what's your opinion about Dave Harriman? I think he's a hack, but I'm not gonna give you my entire opinion of Dave Harriman. A day will come where you'll get it, but for now, I'm not going to. I have a lot of. Anyway, I have a lot to say about Dave Harriman, but not for today. Rafael said, I think he is great at explaining physics, and Leonard did some great shows with him. I think both of that is true, at least was true. Would love to see him on your show over my dead body, but not sure if he is alive. He is alive, at least technically. But yeah, I would have nothing to do with Dave Harriman. And one day, I will tell you why, but you'll have to wait till that day. All right, Michael, do you need to be more intellectual to be altruistic? This is why Europeans take altruism more seriously than Americans. No, I don't think so. I mean, in the Middle Ages, people were very non-intellectual, very religious, and altruistic. I don't think it's a matter of how intellectual you are. Indeed, I think intellectuals might intellectuals, I think, more than anybody understand that altruism is a fraud. Many of them are willing to impose that fraud on you. It's the common people who get suckered by the fraud and actually let it infect them and live by it. Michael also asks, what is in America's future, both short-term and long-term? I don't know. I don't know, in a sense that it depends on so many factors. I don't think history is deterministic, and it depends on choices people make. It depends who wins the next election. It depends on how the universities respond to what has been brought to donors in universities, and parents respond to the insanity on campuses that has been brought to their attention by, I'd say, the last 4 years since BLM on to today. I think people are going to make choices. They're going to change. They're going to determine what path America takes. I don't see a very positive path in the short term. Depends on what you mean by the short term. Let's say 5 years for America. No matter who wins this election, I think it's going to be bad news. Maybe not in the short run economically, but I think it's going to be bad news in terms of the foundation it lays for the future. So my view is in the short to medium term, we putz along. We manage somehow. We don't collapse, but we don't succeed enormously. There's more angst. There's more political hatred. Maybe there's more political violence, but there's just generally just a general melee, not melee, and unhappiness and conflict. And then in the long run, depending again what you mean by the long run, I think we either really decline and things get a lot worse, or things will start getting better. I mean, there's insight for you. They'll either get worse or they'll get better. So one of the two will happen, and it will depend on the kind of choices we make between now and then. It depends on the politicians we choose, depends on the intellectuals influence, how much, which intellectuals and how much influence they have on the culture. Best I can do. All right, Scott asks, Soros is using 80 million to tell social media companies to de-amplify bad views. How involved in public policy does he have to be before it becomes attempted censorship, or does that require a government badge? It requires a government badge. He could spend $1 trillion. He could buy every social media company and turn them into Marxist channels, and it would not be censorship. Again, either you believe in private property or you don't believe in private property. And it's not censorship by proxy, because he is not the government. He is not the government, and the government is not telling him to do it. There is no such thing as censorship by proxy. The censorship is when the government goes to Twitter and says, don't do this or that. That's the censorship. Twitter can't censor. The government can censor Twitter. That's what they did. That's what they did at Facebook. They did all these other companies. They censored. Soros cannot censor. And again, it's stunning to me that, because you disagree with him, the right spends a lot of money on trying to influence social media. Is that censorship? If they spend 100 million, are they censoring more than Soros? It's unbelievable to me that there are people out there whose name will not be mentioned. Scott might be among them, but names won't be mentioned, whose principles, ideals, beliefs go right out the window as soon as we're talking about somebody on the left. So, private property sinks him out. Oh, but Soros, no. Well, Soros, it's okay to use force against him to silence him. Money, spending money on campaign, that is speech, except when it's Soros. When Soros spends money on campaign stuff, that's censorship. That's wrong. That's bad. So it goes completely out the window. It's completely, an issue of private property. And if you don't understand that it's an issue of private property, you don't understand what free speech actually is. And I say that not in hyperbole. I do not think, Scott, that you understand the issue of free speech. You really should reread Ayn Rand and what she says about free speech. I mean, she's very clear about this. And, you know, unless it's the government going, it's not a violation. Read Ayn Rand. And again, the listeners here can judge who understands Ayn Rand better, Scott or myself. I don't think that is a difficult decision to make, particularly on this issue. I mean, it's so clear cut. Ayn Rand is so clear cut about it. You know, I mean, fine. You can say you disagree with Ayn Rand, and I'm fine with that. Fine about that. If you disagree with Ayn Rand, you can disagree with Ayn Rand, but don't pretend that you're representing Ayn Rand. Here is the first sentence of the entry in the Ayn Rand lexicon. It's from the essay Man's Rights. Censorship is a term pertaining only to government action. My emphasis on only. No private action is censorship. No private individual or agency can silence a man or suppress a publication. Only the government can do so. The freedom of speech of private individuals includes the right not to agree, not to listen, and not to finance one's own antagonists. So it's a government edict. That's what it means. And indeed, the idea that money can censor is an idea of the left. This is a classic leftist argument, and indeed is an idea in Citizens United that the left made and the Supreme Court rejected, that money is a form of censorship. And what happens is, what's happening today, more and more, is that the right is adopting leftist tactics and leftist ideology in order to fight the left. In order to fight the left. All right. Yeah, I mean, read the whole section in Man's Right. I mean, she deals exactly with this issue. Exactly with this issue. All right. Let's see. Michael. Thank you, Michael. Wow, spending a lot of money today on the Super Chats. Appreciate it. Where are the rest of you? Michael's doing all the work for you guys. Literally all the work for you guys. He is single-handedly making this show viable. A lot of you are free riding off of him. All right. Anytime human flourishing conflicts with altruism, people do not always side with altruism. That's true. They don't always side with altruism because there's still an impact of the Enlightenment. And as a consequence, people often pursue human flourishing and reject the altruistic perspective on a particular issue. That's right. Often, after they do that, they feel guilty, which is altruism's revenge on them, right? And that's what's so sad, that altruism, altruism affects you in a complex, varied way, not always in the obvious way of encouraging you to do a particular thing. It often, you do the opposite, but then you feel guilty. And that is a tragedy, a real tragedy. Michael asked, is it possible the regulatory state will shrink while the welfare state increases? It's possible. It's unlikely, but it is possible. I mean, I think that happened in the United States during the 1970s and early 1980s, during the Jimmy Carter administration and the Jimmy Carter and Reagan administrations. Regulations shrunk And the welfare state did not. It continued to expand. So it certainly is possible. I just don't see any energy behind that. Anybody really wanting to do that in politics today. But certainly under Jimmy Carter and Reagan, even beginning with Ford, that was what was going on. Regulatory state shrinking, welfare expanding. Somebody's asking what a super chat is. If you go at the bottom of the chat, there was a little circle with a dollar sign inside of it, or square. I'm not sure what it looks like on a phone, but there's a dollar sign down there. You can click on that, and you can contribute to the show using that, a sticker, or you can contribute to the show and ask a question. And I basically guarantee that I'll answer every question that's asked in the super chat. And I also read all the super chats. So even if you want to make a comment that you want to make sure that I read out aloud, you can do so by using the super chat feature. So the questions I'm reading out loud now are people who've submitted super chats in that way. You can too. And by the way, the sticker feature is great because you don't have to ask a question and yet you can support the show. John did that right off the bat. Mary Aline has done that. She does that almost every show, and a bunch of other people. So thank you. Fred Harper just gifted a membership to somebody. Who's the lucky giftee? Who's the lucky? Midas Matthews just got a membership from Fred Harper. So Harper, can you choose who gets the gift? I'm curious. Or does, what if I gift a bunch of memberships now and they go to people I don't want to be members unless they pay? No, you can't. It goes randomly. That's the challenge. I hope Midas is worthy of the membership. There you go. Midas just got it. Right. Midas, you should say thank you to Fred Harper. Even though he didn't intend it to you, you still benefited from it. All right, Alexis, $50. Thank you, Alexis. I guess this time is good for you Europeans, huh? You guys get to listen to the show now, and the entire show now. I'm losing Americans and gaining Europeans. I think from a financial perspective, purely financial, with the exception of Alexis maybe, not a good deal for me. So I am definitely reconsidering. Yeah, it's 50 pounds sterling, so even more than $50. Thanks, Alexis. $63.49. But the problem is that YouTube does not give me a very generous, exchange rate. It kind of, I think it does a search out there. Google, which owns YouTube, does a search on the worst exchange rate possible and gives me that. Okay. Let's see. Midas says he hopes he's worthy. He hopes to be worthy of it. So that's good. All right. Yes, I'm considering the format, given that I think that I'm losing a lot of listeners who listened in the evening live and can't listen during the day. I'm gaining some Europeans, losing them, so I have to balance all that out. All right, Alexis, any view or any remote interest regarding the upcoming EU parliamentary election? P.S. I partially sent that one because I cannot stand being called a free rider. I wish more people had that attitude towards being free riders that you did. If they did, we would be raising a lot more funds in this show, And I know a lot of you don't listen live, but you can also not be free riders by becoming monthly contributors on Patreon or on yaronbrookshow.com/member or on PayPal. So yes. Yeah, I mean, I am interested in what happens in the EU and in the EU Parliament. I find it interesting, partially because it suggests what's what the political trends are in Europe. Also because I've spoken several times now in front of a right-wing coalition in Europe that is part of the European Parliament. So I've been exposed to a lot of the right-wing political parties running for the European Parliament. It's an interesting mixture of classical conservatives, you might call them, Thatcher-right conservatives, and xenophobic, central planning, nationalistic right-wing nuts, right? Rabidly anti-immigration people. So it's an interesting conference I speak at. It's an interesting combination of people that I interact with. And somebody's just knocking on my roof. I don't know what they're doing. All right, I think that's gone. Did you guys hear that? Boom, 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 boom. I'm curious. Anyway, so I am curious. I'm interested what's going to happen. I do think that the projections make sense. That is, the projection is going to be a significant movement to the right and a significant movement to the ugly right, if you will, to the nationalist, xenophobic right, to political parties that are very opposed to immigration, but also very opposed to capitalism, very opposed to freedom. So that is going to be interesting. We know that the right in Germany is on the rise, or more accurately, both the right and the left who are xenophobic are on the rise. But it's going to be interesting to see. There's a Swedish political party that's very right-wing. There's a Finnish political party that's very right-wing. They're all over Europe. Of course, there's the Popular Front, I think, in France. There's the right wing in Spain. I think they're going to all do very, very well. And the question is, how well? Will they get enough votes to be a dominant force, together with other right-wing coalitions to dominate the European Union? Or will ultimately the European Union just continue to be led by the left, just with a smaller coalition, smaller number of people, smaller majority? Maybe a centrist view emerges, and that becomes the ruling focus of the European Union Parliament. I don't know. But certainly the right is going to have significant inroads. Also, the right in different countries is different. Some of it is, like Meloni, is good on Ukraine, Russia. Some of it, like the right in Slovakia, where the prime minister, there was an assassination attempt against him, are horrible in that they are pro-Russia. So it really does depend on who you're talking to. So on which right is going to win, and different countries will send different representatives. I will tell you that the right in Poland is one of the worst. I've been told by members of the European Parliament who are Polish that there's no such thing as individual rights. There's a fantasy. It's nonsense on stilts. That I should stop talking about individual rights. That no such things exist, and that Europe would benefit from abandoning those. What really exists are national rights, collective rights, and whatever the majority, or whatever the people, the folk actually want, the spirit of the people. That's what matters. Thank you, Alexis. I really appreciate it, and now. I know you're relieved, and I'm relieved that you are no longer a free rider, and you have. You contribute a lot of money on a monthly basis. You're certainly not a free rider. You know that. Guilt is a powerful tool. It really is. Even with people who should know better. I'm kidding. Alexis was kidding, and I'm kidding too. All right, Urban Porcupine. I think the right's opposition to immigration is similar to Malthusian. Humans are simply mouths to feed instead of thinking creature beings. Creative beings. I definitely think that's part of it. Part of it is Malthusian. Part of it is an economic ignorance that is really quite amazing. It's the perceptual level mentality that Ayn Rand talks about in The Missing Link. It's this idea that they can't think conceptually, they can't see the value added, they can't see the trader principle, the essence of the trader principle. All they can observe is the zero-sum nature of what looks like transaction. That's definitely part of it. But I also think, and there's no question this exists, right? There's a lot of xenophobia. As unpleasant it is to say about Americans don't like the other. And they, particularly if they come in large numbers, and particularly if their skin color is different, they don't want them. They don't. So it's a combination of economic ignorance, perceptual level mentality, and xenophobia. By the way, xenophobia is also an attribute of a perceptual level mentality. It's the same aspect of primitivism, right? And yes, that is the opposition to these migrants, even though, tribalism is a consequence. Tribalism is a consequence. They are open to tribalism because of all of that. Alexa says, I was trying to guilt everyone else. Yeah, I try to do that every show, all show, and it has limited success. Limited success. Maybe I've done too good of a job telling people not to feel guilty. But here it's earned guilt. Here they deserve to feel guilty, right? Andrew, if not knowing some things should make a person go crazy, it would mean perpetual madness for all of mankind. That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. You have to decide what is essential and what is not. You cannot know everything. You cannot be. And you cannot know everything even that, seems important, because it probably isn't. The question of the shape of the universe is just not important. It's not relevant to anything. Even if it doesn't make sense. That it is finite, but has no shape. And if you keep going, you don't escape it. You don't leave it, even though it's finite. None of that makes sense. But most physics doesn't make sense once you get to a certain level of abstraction. Once you get away from Newtonian physics. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, we'll talk more about that with Keith Lockitch on Monday. Monday, Keith is going to be here, 7 p.m. East Coast time. Don't forget, Keith Lockitch, we're going to talk about physics and physics education and what you should know and what you shouldn't know. And how deep do you want to go? And maybe you'll even answer some of these questions. Keith, what's the deal with the shape of the universe, Keith? Oh, Jennifer's joined us. Great. Let's see. Kabutar says, Happy Norwegian Constitution Day. It was a pretty good constitution back in the day, especially after they removed the ban on Jewish immigration. How many Jews migrated to Norway after the ban on Jewish immigration? I'm curious. But yeah, Scandinavia went through these periods of amazing freedom. Amazing freedom. It was actually, hope Mina's okay. Jennifer was at the vet with her dog. Hope the dog's okay. Scandinavia was maybe certainly among the freest places on planet Earth from 1870 to 1930s. I don't know when the Norwegian Constitution was written. I wouldn't be surprised if it was written in the 19th century, and it's pretty good. And I'm curious how much this ban on Jewry affected Norway in a sense of how many Jews were they that had to leave, how many Jews joined after they could. I don't think many. All right. Andrew, what do you think it reveals about the right's notion of strength, that it thinks it's a sign of strength to put up a wall to keep foreigners out. I think that what motivates the right is the opposite of self-esteem. What motivates the right is fear. And when you're afraid, you build walls. When you're confident, you don't build walls. So it reveals what it reveals about the right is a lack of self-esteem, a lack of confidence, and a fundamental fear, in particular here, fear of the other, fear of the unknown, fear of the future. This is, you remember Sullivan, who I debated at Clemson University, saying that what a lot of conservatives wanted, he said this favorably, they just want to be able to sit on their porch at the end of the day, drink a beer, and just sit on that rocking chair and just enjoy the weather or whatever. This is front porch conservatism. They want stagnation. Ayn Rand has a whole concept of an essay on the divine right of stagnation. They want to stagnate. They don't want change because they're afraid. They're afraid of the future. They're afraid of change. They're afraid of growth. They're afraid of the other. They're afraid of technology. They're afraid. This is why, by the way, why aren't conservatives big in Silicon Valley? I mean, there are few, but why is Silicon Valley so dominated by the left? Because the reality is that the left is much more eager and excited and motivated around the future than the right is. The right is motivated and excited and eager about the past. 1220. Now, the left is wrong about aspects of it, but in terms of desiring future and desiring more technology and desiring growth and desire, at least of some of the left, that's a great virtue. And they go into tech. How many right-wing entrepreneurs are there in tech? Very few. And even the ones that are, like Elon Musk, when they went into tech, they were leftists. Elon Musk has come a long way. All right. Few things. Oh, what did I get? I got something in the mail today from Elizabeth. All right, I'll remind you that Alex Epstein is a sponsor of the Yaron Brook Show. He writes commentary on energy, on fossil fuels, and on environmentalism more broadly. He writes the best talking points on how to deal with issues that come up relating to those issues than anybody out there in the world. He is the best thinker about these issues that I know. And he writes regularly on kind of the issues of the day, the issues that are happening, the things that are going on. And I encourage you to subscribe. alexepstein.substack.com. alexepstein.substack.com. I also, let's see, also a sponsor of the show, as you know, I think, is the Ayn Rand Institute. Ayn Rand Institute invites you to OCON 2024. While the flash sale ends today, you can get a discount till the end of the day today. I'm not sure what the end of the day counts. I would do it as quickly as possible. If you don't make it, you can still get the Yaron Brook show supported discount, the 10% discount, versus the flash sale, which gives you a 20% discount. You can do that with the code 24YBS10, 24YBS10. And yeah, it'd be amazing opportunity to meet intellectuals, to meet non-intellectuals, to hang out with people and have a blast. One of the best, I think, for most of you, if you've never been before, I think it lands up being one of the best weeks of your life. I'm not exaggerating. Let's see. Yes, a few things from me. Public speaking workshop the day after OCON. You can sign up on my website. It's yaronbookshow.com. and then click on the workshop, and you can sign up for it. It's a 1 day long, face-to-face, a lot of personal attention, one-on-one time where you practice public speaking and I critique you. Please consider that. If anybody is interested in personal coaching from me, you can write to me at yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. That is generally my email. Don't send me junk, but if you need to communicate with me, that is the way to do so. If you want me to come and speak at your college, if you want me to come and do a talk in your business or your professional association or anything like that, best way to reach me is at yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. All right. Icy Saracen. Do you think Israel should adapt China method of dealing with terrorists? They use re-education camps to prevent Uighurs from joining the East Turkestan Islamic movement, China's version of Hamas. No, I don't think that's the right approach. And China, there is no right approach for China. China's an authoritarian dictatorship, so it doesn't have any. It's a lecture to lecture anybody about, including the Islamists, about a proper government. But what China is doing to the Muslims is, using them as slave labor. I mean, if it was just re-educating, and it was re-educating in schools, that would be one thing, but that's not what they're doing. They're putting them in real camps. They're brainwashing. They're, again, using them as slave labor. They're doing a lot of really nasty things. I think Israel needs to reoccupy Gaza. It needs to be there. It does need to re-educate. It doesn't need camps for it. It needs to re-educate in sense of it needs to have control over the textbooks from which the Palestinian children are learning. I don't think it needs to try to re-educate adults. Their re-education should be the fact that they lost, and they lost so badly. But they need to get rid of all the propaganda about Israel, about Jews, about the rest of it, that Hamas was teaching these kids, or UNRWA, the UN was teaching these kids. And it needs to replace it with reading, writing, math. Teach them what they need to know. And it doesn't need to have pro-Israel brainwashing. It just needs to teach them, factually. It definitely needs to portray Hamas as bloodthirsty maniacs, anti-human life destroyers. But it doesn't need to propagandize. It just needs to tell the truth. I wonder what exactly the Chinese are teaching the Uyghurs so that they avoid Islam. They're teaching them the values of fascism or communism, or what exactly? Right? So, I don't think you need camps for that. Alexis, do you think more objectivists recruit on the left or on the right today? Did that change historically? Where should efforts be focused? I think it's a very difficult question to ask. I think that most recruits are from the young, the undecided young, or the young that might be flirting with the right or flirting with the left. The more committed people become, the harder it is to convert them. The more committed people become, the harder it is to get them. I think energy should be focused on the young, and the young of both parts. I have found that it is the easiest place to recruit, the place that I've recruited the most, are people who listen to Lex Friedman and people who used to listen to Dave Rubin. And these tend to be people who are not hard right or hard left. They're young people who are interested in ideas, exploring, still kind of open in terms of that exploration, trying to figure out what makes sense in life, rejecting, again, the hard left and the hard right. And I think that's where you're going to get your recruits. You're going to get the recruits from curious minds of left or of right or of center. I don't think we recruit more from the right. I don't know if we recruit less, but I don't think we recruit more from the right. And if you look at objectivist intellectuals, and where they came from, Did they come from the left or from the right? I'd say certainly I don't know any of them who came from the far right. I know some who came from the far left. I don't know anybody who came from the far right. Most of them came from the left or from the center. Kind of didn't have a specific political ideology when they encountered Ayn Rand. I mean, think of Nikos, who was an out-and-out Marxist, right? A real Marxist. And he became an objectivist. Do we know any fascists who became objectivists? I don't know any. I mean, Midas says he was a quasi-left and then became libertarian and then objectivist. And that's a common path. So generally, here's going to be a controversial statement. Luckily for Scott, he's not here because I think this would melt his ears. But the reality is that the left attracts thinkers more than the right. The left attracts thinkers more than the right. The left's more intellectual than the right. What is it? Overwhelmingly, people with college degrees vote left. Raphael was more of a classical liberal, but not a right. He was more of a kind of a soft, small L libertarian. Hex says, I was also left-leaning. Then I played Bioshock. Bioshock did it for Hex. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm curious. You guys, you tell me. Left, right, libertarian right off the bat? Did you come to Ayn Rand? Where were you before you came to Ayn Rand? All right. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Alexis. That was Alexis. Apollo is center-right. Chandler considered himself a conservative. Andrew says left, right, libertarian, objectivist. That was his progression. Robert Ringer to Ayn Rand. Who's Robert Ringer? Why do I mean, I should know who that is, but I don't. Anyway, that's an interesting survey. We can run a survey one of these days, a poll was with that. Alexis was born a free market guy. I think he's the only person in France and his colonies to be born a free market guy, right? I mean, people in England were born free market guys and in America, but in France to be born a free market guy, yeah, I don't count people who never became objectivists. I mean, we're talking about people who become objectivists. So, all right. Fenn Harper says he was taking ideas seriously but not politically charged. John says he was a Goldwater conservative. Gene says far left. It is interesting. It is interesting to if we. It's hard for me to add this all up, but nobody says he was a libertarian. He was a libertarian nobody. Robin says he was a rightish guy in Belgium. So anyway, all over the spectrum, but it seems that it's probably a little tilted to the left. Okay, let's jump into our topic today, which is afternoon topic, which is ambition. And this is just a reminder, if you will, because I've done talks and I've done shows on ambition before, and I wanted to just do something positive and uplifting as we go into the weekend to remind you that ambition is important, and it's what does ambition mean? It means wanting to be the best that you can be at X, at whatever it happens to be. It means striving for a better future in whatever it is that is important to you. I don't think you can be ambitious in everything. One of the things about ambition is you need to focus it on the things that matter most to you, the things that are going to impact your life the most, and are going to have also where you can have control, where you can achieve. But in every realm of your life, which is important to you, romance, career, family. I mean, if you care about art, you should be ambitious. Ambitious in the sense of, I want greater success. I want to be better. I want to do more. I want to achieve more. I want the best. And if you already have the best, I want to hold on to that. I want to make it better and keep making it better. Jeremy just gifted 5 memberships. So Adam, New Intellectual, Sylvanos. Sylvanos is not a member. That is surprising. Enric and Shali. Shali's not a member. It's all surprising. All of them are now members. This is good because I think they all deserve it. They've all been supporters of the Yaron Brook Show for quite a while. They've all been, they all are here often, and this is great. I wonder if the gifted membership go to people who are right now listening live. Adam, New Intellectual, Silvanos, Enric, and Shali on right now. I'm curious, because this will teach us how this all goes. Anyway, ambition is striving to be better. And in every one of the areas of your life, you should really take time on a regular basis to sit down and think. Because thinking is how it all starts always, right? Can I be better at what I'm doing? How do I become better at what I'm doing? Because in almost every case, you can be better at what you're doing. Whether it's in your marriage, or whether it's looking for a girlfriend, or whether it's in your job, in your career, in your pursuit of whatever values you have, you want to pursue, you are pursuing. You could do better. So, how can I be better at achieving my values? How can I be better in every one of these realms? And really, really go for it. Too many people settle. Too many people settle in their relationships with other people. Love, friendship, even family. Don't settle. I mean, you might come to the conclusion the status quo is the best you can do. That's fine. That's fine. But that should be the exception, not the rule. In most things in life, you could do better. But too many people settle. Oh, this job's comfortable. It's comfortable. I live in the city I want to live in. I can walk to work, and it's nice. I don't particularly enjoy it, but it's not painful, and I make a decent living. So why be ambitious? Why be ambitious? Because life requires it. Living requires forward movement. Living requires constant improvement and the seeking of constant improvement. Living requires that you love the thing that you do. And here I mean living is living fully. You might be okay with it right now, but it's not satisfying. You're losing something by not striving towards something even greater. By settling, you're giving up on self-esteem. And by settling, I think you're giving up on happiness. You're giving up on the possibility of happiness. Happiness doesn't come from settling. Contentment comes from settling. Happiness comes from striving, from seeking, from really engaging and achieving your values and being ambitious about what values you're going to achieve. being ambitious about the values you're going to achieve. That is, whoops, what am I doing here? What's that? That's what happiness requires. That's what happiness requires. It's what life requires. And you can see it in advancements, just that the species of human beings, periods where humans are ambitious, they're striving, they're trying to make their life better, they're building, they're creating, they're moving, they're pulling, life gets better. Periods where they're settled, they're not happy, and nothing gets better. So again, one of the things I admire about people who start companies, one of the things I admire about Silicon Valley is they're ambitious. They want to change the world. They want to create values nobody else has ever created before. They're willing to work unbelievably hard, long hours, and incredible mental and emotional effort to build a team and create a product and strive towards something. And many of them, most of them, fail. And the good ones out of that rise up and they do something else and they bring that energy to it. They don't just want to live, they want to live, which means they want to exert themselves to the fullest. They want to see how good really am I. I want to test my mettle. And that requires real energy and real ambition. And it is how we establish self-esteem. I can do that rather than, I'm okay. I'm okay. Much more exciting when you say, I can do that. Right? And even if it turns out you can't, I tried. Wow. That's a big boost. I tried. I failed. I didn't die. I learned getting up on my feet. I'm going to try again or something different, or I'm going to do something different. I learned. I'm bigger for having failed. So that is a big part of what it means to live. And the same thing is true in relationships. I'm going to settle for my high school friends. I don't really like them, but it's comfortable. We've been together for a long time, and it's just fine. It's good. That's good enough. Versus, I'm going to go find new friends, people who share my values. For example, I'm going to go to Ocon, and I'm going to make it a goal to establish friendships with people who share my values. Not with everybody at Ocon, people I like. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to get to know people. I'm going to strive for new friendships. I mean, most people may be ambitious at work, but then they love life, their friendships, their other things, they let go. They settle, they cruise. Now, what about if you're not ambitious? You're just not. Can you make yourself one? Yes, I think you can. How? By really understanding what your values are. By really thinking through what is going to make you happy, what you think will drive your happiness. By articulating to yourself, and often the best way to do this is in writing, what your values are, what your hierarchy of values are, what is most important to you. And put that in writing. And then say, okay, what is preventing me from achieving this? And that would be true, again, in every realm. I mean, you're single and you want to find somebody. What is preventing me from finding somebody? What is preventing me from getting the raise? What is preventing me from starting my own company? What is preventing me from taking a trip around the world? What is preventing me from achieving my values? and work through what it is. And usually what you'll discover is what's really preventing you is, I don't know, laziness, fear. And laziness and fear are really, really destructive emotions, destructive tendencies. That it's just a question of will. There's no gimmick to how to overcome them. You just have to overcome them. You just have to go, screw this, I'm going to do it. Jump, you got to jump into the cold water. A lot of it is fear. And fear is what often prevents us from attaining self-esteem. When we were little kids, we were told, oh, you can't do that. It's too dangerous. Don't go there. Oh, no, that's for older kids, not for you. You might fall and scrape your knee. Or you might not be successful. So fear of failure, suddenly in Europe, much more than in the United States, but in Europe, fear of failure is huge. But fear generally is big. So you have to ask yourself, why do I feel fear? What is the source of the fear? What will happen if I fail? Walk through. Imagine in your mind what actually happens if you fail. And I think if you do that honestly and objectively, you'll discover that, yeah, it won't be pleasant. Yes, it will be hard. But it's not devastating. You won't die. You won't be in a position you can't recover. So walk it through in your mind. Think it through. Think, what's the worst case scenario? And then think about the probability of it. Right? You can always think about, oh my God, across the street I'll get run over. But what's the probability you'll get run over? It's almost zero if you look both ways. And then also, and this is when Freeman makes this point, think through, imagine what you will have learned, what you would have gained by the experience of trying, but even the experience of failing. What will you learn about yourself? What will you learn about the business or your relationship or whatever it happens to be? So again, do imagining in your own mind in terms of worst case, best case, likely case. What are the probabilities? And what will I learn? What am I giving up? What are the alternatives? I mean, the alternative might be safety. But is safety a high value for you? Should it be a high value for you? Do you think safety leads to happiness? So I think people are not ambitious because they're afraid. And because they lack the self-esteem, they lack the confidence, and they lack the imagination. So be imaginative. Think it through. Deal with the fear. Deal with the fear by imagining it. And think through, really think through costs and benefits, rewards and punishments. How bad could it be versus how good? And how even the bad can be good long term. Yes, I might fail, but will I learn something that'll make me even better next time? And again, this is true. You can imagine this in relationships. If you never go up to a girl and ask her out, nobody will ever turn you down. All right, safety, stagnation, comfort, but you'll also never go out on a date. If you go and ask a girl for a date and she says no, okay, her loss, I'm a kind of cool guy. What have you lost? What really have you lost? What are you actually afraid of? Disapproval? Who cares? A lot of people in this chat disapprove of me. Doesn't stop me from doing it. It kind of even encourages me. So people don't need out. And maybe you ask the same girl again another time. Maybe get to know her a little bit better. Or maybe, yeah, she's not it. Maybe you have to look elsewhere. That's okay too. But you'll learn. You won't have to wonder for the rest of your life. I wonder if she would have ever gone out with me. I wonder if there was a future for us. And the answer might be no. But knowing no is much better than not knowing. Much better. Because then you can go on. Robin says the people who agree with you are much more valuable. Absolutely true. Absolutely. And the people who I convinced to agree with me, that's cool. But yes, absolutely. You guys are much more valuable. And you don't have to agree with me on everything. I mean, that would be bizarre, but on the important stuff. So if you're not ambitious, work on it. If you're not ambitious, you're probably crippled by fear in one way or the other. If you're not ambitious, fear and doubt. Challenge yourself. Question them. Make sure that you understand what's going on. And once you can rid yourself of the fear, ambition is just, I mean, there's no limit. And there's no, I don't think ambition will escape you. Suddenly, you will discover how much is possible in life. And how much, in a sense, you want in life that you've been repressing. All right. Let's see. Okay. Questions about ambition would be great. Any kind of questions, comments you guys have. I see that Andrew has one. We'll get to that in a minute. Chirilu has a question from Sweden. I'm not really into classical music, but I loved Dvorak's Ninth Symphony. Got any recommendations on what I should check out next? Yeah, I mean, if you like Dvorak's Ninth Symphony, then you do like at least some classical music, and you like the format. So it's just a matter of finding kind of dynamic, heroic, stimulating music to get you. And then I think as you do that, you will discover a wide range of other emotions that classical music can evoke. So I would definitely, if you like Dvorak's Ninth, I would definitely look at things like Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto, Tchaikovsky's First Piano Concerto, Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto, Brahms' Violin Concerto, Beethoven's Seventh Symphony and Fifth Symphony. The Ninth might be too much in the beginning. What else? Yeah, I know there's more, but it's escaping my mind. But those would be good beginnings. Come back to me after Rachmaninoff. Rachmaninoff's Second, Third, particularly Second. Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto. Tchaikovsky's 1 and 2 Piano Concertos, particularly 1. Violin Concertos by Tchaikovsky, by Brahms, by Mendelssohn. Beethoven, Violin Concerto. Piano Concerto number 5. That's a good beginning. And Symphony number 5 and 7, particularly 7. At least for me, 7. That's a good beginning. We can go from there. Andrew, how do you conceive in relation to ambition that Rourke passed up opportunities that didn't meet his standards? Well, but ambition isn't about money. Ambition isn't about just building. Ambition isn't, it's a great question, by the way, isn't about title, isn't about level within the hierarchy. Ambition is about how good am I in doing the things in the pursuit of my values? And compromise is not one of Rourke's values. Indeed, for Rourke to take the bank building, in the famous scene where he walks away from it, is to settle. It is to compromise. It is to accept what's given and not to be ambitious. Only an incredibly ambitious person who wants only the best and is not willing to settle and wants to grow and advance and pursue his values, only such a person is ambitious. Keating in The Fountainhead is not ambitious, even though he rises in the firm and gets a senior position and makes a lot of money. He's not ambitious. He's settling. Because the measure of ambition is not money or status. It's nothing like that. Those are all second-handed, in a sense. The standard of ambition is, am I being the best that I can be at achieving my goals? Am I pursuing goals that are challenging enough? Am I pushing the limits of my ability? Justin, are you going to have an exciting announcement at Ocon? Yes, I am. I think, unless something happens. Very exciting announcement at Ocon. I think I'm going to do the announcing. I guess they could deny me, but yes, very exciting announcement. I think everybody, you should be there live because it's going to be exciting. Can't give it away because I have to preserve the excitement for Ocon. Yes, I have discovered a UFO and it's hidden in a giant wasp. Those of you listening on the podcast, don't ask. Ed, I always loved Jim Rohn's quote, "For things to change, you have to change." Yes. And here we're talking about, change, not in a sense of giving up or not in a sense of compromise, but in a sense of growing, in a sense of becoming better, in a sense of changing your world and changing your environment and changing yourself to accomplish more. Chewy Lou, he says thank you. Thank you, Chewy Lou. We got strange names today. I guess it's the Norwegians and the Swedes. The Norwegians and Swedes have got funny handles. Kabuta, that's Norwegian. What age should you give up ambition? Never. Never, ever, ever give up ambition. I mean, one of the things I admire most about Leonard Peikoff is exactly that. I don't know, in his 60s, I think it was, he decided he was going to sculpt. He was going to be a really good sculptor. And he tried that, and he made some sculpture, and he realized, I'm not going to be a great sculptor. So my ambition ends there, right? He failed. But that didn't stop him from then going and trying to write a great novel and trying to write song lyrics. And he constantly is pursuing stuff, even though most of these pursuits end up in what you would perceive as failure. It doesn't matter because he's constantly pursuing values, constantly ambitious, and he enjoys the process, and he learns from every one of these attempts. So, and he's fully engaged and fully alive. Now remember, he's now 90 and constantly, he just told me that, what he told me a few months ago, he's going to write another book, right? At 90. So, constantly pushing and pushing and pushing and striving and thriving. Now, whether he writes the book or not is not the point. It's that he's always thinking, what can I do next? And how can I push myself? So never stop being ambitious. You stop being ambitious, you die. You settle, you just nowhere. Right? Thank you, Kabuta. Ed, this will be the last question unless we get more. And don't forget, you can support the show with stickers, so you can help us get to our target and our goal without asking a question, just by using a sticker. That $sign down there, you can just click on it. It'd be great to get a bunch of you who are watching right now to just give $2, $4, $10, $100, and get us closer to where we are trying to go. I don't know who the Wilson sisters are. What am I missing? Sorry about the noises. The noises are people who are working on the roof. I live on the top floor. Everything, all the stuff they're doing on the roof is impacting us. So that's the noises that you're hearing are from up there. Ed says, I was a good athlete and was not competitive, and I was not competitive, except with myself. I just wanted to see how good I could get at something. That was my ambition. That's great. I think that's great. And that kind of athleticism, I think, is going to last you for a long time in life, because at every age, you don't have to beat younger people. You don't have to beat other people. You don't have to even beat yourself when you were young. At every age, you can push yourself. At every age, you can be the best that you can be, and that is the goal. And that is very, very useful, particularly given the importance of physical exercise, is to be ambitious. By the way, we should be ambitious about our health. Exercise is one way to manifest that ambition. All right, Andrew, do you think of ambition as subconscious attitude or quality of moral character? I certainly think it's a result. I certainly think it's an issue of moral character. It's a consequence of taking your life seriously. It's in a sense, it comes under pride. It's having pride in yourself. Says, don't settle. Life's too precious. Life's too important. I'm not going to settle. So it's a moral issue under pride, and it gets automatized in a sense and becomes a subconscious attitude. But it is only going to be automatized in that sense when you take your moral values seriously. And that's what pride demands. What is pride? Moral ambitiousness. Being ambitious with regard to morality. So, but I think, what does that entail, right? It means being ambitious when it comes to productiveness. Well, that means being ambitious when it comes to career or your central purpose. It's ambitiousness when it comes to rationalities. That means using reason to guide you. It means ambitious when it comes to justice, which means being ambitious when it comes to the relationship with other people. And what does that mean? So moral ambitiousness is really ambition about everything important in life. And that's morality. Deborah, thank you for the sticker. If everybody watching right now did a sticker like Deborah's, we would reach our target. That is a reality. Raphael, have you tried to sculpt stone? Me? You gotta be kidding. God, I can't sculpt anything. I can't draw. I have no ambition with regard to these things, because there's no point in having ambition where you have just no skill, no talent, no potential at all. Zero, nada. So my wife sculpts, but she sculpts in clay. She far prefers clay, molding something into what you want it to be, rather than chipping away at something to reveal what you want it to be. Very different, I think, attitudes. People like Michelangelo were good at both, but Michelangelo it was all chipping, it was all stone, right? It was all marble. So no, I would never try that. It's too, I never wanted to, never appealed to me, never interested me. I mean, that's the other thing is, you got to know what appeals to you, what's interesting, what's important to you. Didn't want to do it. I love looking at it. I'm surrounded by sculpture in my life, surrounded by painting in my life, but I have no interest in doing it. It's like music. Love listening to it, love hearing it, no interest in actually producing it in any form. Enric says, for work, I can see achieving ambition by developing ability and taking on what I can achieve. Relationships are harder to see the path to achievement. That's a great question. No, I think absolutely. There's skills to relationships. I want to make my marriage the best that it can be. What don't I do well in my relationship with my wife? I don't listen well. I don't take certain types of her ideas seriously. I don't know, whatever it is, right? You come up with them. I need to be better at that. I'm going to practice the skills necessary to be better at that. I need to work on my attitude. I need to work on my, I don't know, whatever it is, my patience. I need to work on my communication skills. I need to work at expressing my feelings better. I need to work at, saying I love her more often. Relationships are very much like that. I need to be more romantic. Jennifer says, right? I mean, all of these things are things that, and whatever you identify. But even with friendship, the same thing with friendship. You might find yourself, I find myself with some people, I sit down, we have dinner, and they nonstop talk about themselves. And it's interesting, and I enjoy it. But they don't ask anything about you. They don't give you one iota of an opportunity to talk about yourself. It's very difficult to be friends with somebody like that. Very difficult to be friends with somebody like that. So, for example, you might notice that you do that. Become a better listener. Ask your friends questions about their lives. Have that as a standing order. I'm going to ask them about things. And it might not come naturally to you. It's something you have to think about, practice. Remember, friendship, like business, is a trade. Remember to trade. You're probably very sensitive to whether the other party is giving you value. But you need to think, if the friendship is valuable, are you giving them value? Are you trading? Are you actually engaged in trade? And again, you might discover you're not. So work on it. Practice it. Think it through. Figure out what's going on psychologically preventing you from doing it, and do it. So, Enrique, hopefully that was a great question. I think a lot of people struggle with this. How, in friendship, in love, in other areas of my life, I mean, think about being a parent. Really hard work, by the way. Tons to think about. Really difficult. Am I spending enough time with my kids? Am I spending too much time with my kids? Am I disciplining them right? Am I not? What do I need to learn? What do I need to study? Who should I talk to so that I can become the best parent I can be? I mean, in every one of your, there's always something to learn. And certainly in relationships, that's true. Most of us are pretty damn lousy at relationships. Troy, thank you. Really, really appreciate it. That is amazing. Troy got us over the target for today easily. And thanks for all the support over the years. Really, really appreciate it. All right, I think we have our final question. All right. Enric says, thank you. I'll include that in my thinking about achieving in relationships. Excellent. Apollo says, I asked a question recently about male physicality as it relates to attractiveness. What are your thoughts on the Quarry Scene in the Fountainhead, Rourke's muscles, etc.? I mean, Rock's a sexy guy. What can you say? I mean, think of it this way. Pretty much everybody in that quarry probably was incredibly muscular. Right? You're working in the quarry, you build muscle. They're probably all pretty strong guys. It's probably all guys, they're all strong. Why do you think Dominique is attracted to Howard Rook? What is it about him that makes her attracted? Because I don't think she's attracted to anybody else in the quarry. I don't think on any other given day she would have come there and Rook wasn't there. She would have been attracted to some random guy who has big muscles. She had to be attracted to something about his spirit, his intelligence, right? His skill. But there was something in his expression that showed independence and intelligence, in spite of the fact that he's in a quarry. And that might have been part of what intrigues her. Why is a man like this in the quarry? And I think she actually says that, thinks that. So it can just be the strength. Now, I think a strong man is just like what would be the equivalent in a woman? A woman who is, relatively thin and, sexual. I mean, that's a plus, but it's not the determining factor. Right? Vivacious, maybe, in a woman. I have to think about what I'm trying to capture. It's not as easy. But yeah, I mean, if he's strong and he's super intelligent and independent and skilled, and something about this guy is really attractive, really intriguing. But it's not the muscles in and of themselves, because there are lots of other people with muscles. Right? Vibrant. Yeah, but I'm trying to think also of a physical quality that is equivalent to physical strength in a woman. What would be the physical quality, if physical strength is to some extent associated with masculinity, because it's associated with the competence to, now, not all masculine men are physically strong, right? I've said that, right? It's not the defining quality, I think, of masculinity, but it can be easily associated. There's something about being healthy, because I think that's what muscles in a man express. It expresses his ability to deal with reality, which is the essential of masculinity. But if it's just that, then it doesn't, because at least masculinity in the 21st century has to be intellectual, because it's the mind that makes it possible. Anyway, I mean, some psychologist, somebody who specializes in masculinity and femininity needs to think these things through and think about how they relate. All right, guys, thank you. Thank you, Troy. Thank you to all the other super chatters. Thank you to Michael, who did $200 early on and then asked a number of other super chat questions. Grace Poise, I like that. That might be it, Grace. Could be sexiness, but maybe sexiness is begs the question. What does that mean? I don't know, and it's something to think about. I'm not an expert in this field, but it's something. There's a whole area of thought here of what does masculinity and femininity mean, particularly in the 21st century. Both have to have something to do ultimately with the mind, I think. Yeah, there's no physicality in submissiveness. Anyway, thank you. I will see you on Monday. That's right. I'll see you on Monday. I think I've got a show in Hebrew on Sunday, but otherwise I'll see you on Monday. Yeah, have a great weekend. Don't forget, if you want to come to Ocon, 20% off today only on the on aynrand.org/start here. Bye, everybody.